All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Here with Phillip over at StructionSite. I'm Alex Dunn at LevelSet, and we'll give a few more minutes just to let a few more people join in. How you doing today, Phillip?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. Did you celebrate Halloween at all?
Yeah. When social distance trick-or-treating with the family and kids, so it was really good. It was a very different feel from
That's
last
awesome.
year, obviously. But yeah, how about yourself?
Yeah, I saw someone, a friend of mine on Facebook. He had a ladder, like a big, A-frame ladder, and he put a giant, like 4-inch PVC pipe through it. So it was like a 10, 15-foot piece of pipe through the ladder across his driveway, and trick-or-treaters would come and he'd drop the candy into the pipe and it would slide through like into the basket of the trick-or-treaters. I was like, that's amazing. Innovation at its best, very socially distanced.
That works.
Awesome. Okay, so I think most people are in here. Few more should trickle in, but why don't we get started? We definitely have a lot to go over today. So without further ado, today's topic is how tracking and documentation work will lead to faster payments and no disputes. We're all about faster payments here at LevelSet, and nobody likes disputes. And StructionSite has a lot of really cool software that's going to help with the cumbersome documentation paperwork process that we're all annoyed with to some extent in construction. So just a little bit on the agenda. I'm not going to read through it, but you see it there on the left. We're going to talk a lot about the current state of tracking, why it's important, and basically how it's going to help. So now I'll let Phillip do some talking. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Phillip, and a little bit about StructionSite.
Yeah, you can go to the next slide. So quick background on myself, Phillip. One of the co-founders of StructionSite. I used to work for a large general contractor. I was actually on the other side of the table where I reviewed pay apps, worked to coordinate with subs, and then co-founded a company called StructionSite, which is a really quick and thorough way using 360 cameras to capture your job site by walking around with photos and videos. And then what we'll do is we'll automatically map where you walked into a construction drawing, so you have that context, virtual tour. In the past, has been used to document what's happened to make sure that you get paid for your work, to help justify change orders, document any kind of damage from other trades, and just basically just getting everyone on the same page, the same social truth visually with what's going on. The picture's worth 1,000 words, 360 photos worth maybe 360,000 words, some of customers have said. And so basically, it's also been said that you don't get paid for what you build, you get paid for what you document. And, we seek to we kind of complement LevelSet in that way, where we will help document the physical job site at scale, which we'll get into a bit more later.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And then that's really cool that you worked for a large national GC. When subs were submitting their pay apps, or when they were trying to, get paid for their work, like from the GC perspective, like what was your MO? Like, how are you looking at that, documentation from your standpoint at that time?
Yeah, also it really depended on the size of the project. Some of the smaller ones where you can get a really close relationship with some of the subs, and you can really establish some of that trust. Some of the jobs were just a lot bigger. Some of them really required, like it's really hard to track stuff, and when things start to get behind, it's easy to point fingers or like try to figure out where things were behind, and other projects, maybe ones that I wasn't directly involved in. Sometimes there would be some incentives to front load stuff a little bit. Obviously definitely understand the reasoning for that. That increases risk, so then the GC could push back, and maybe underpay in some ways, and that's obviously not a very healthy relationship, right? At the end of the day, we should, people should get paid for what they do, and just be whole. So really trying to manage that that gap has been kind of the biggest challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And we see that a lot here on our side too, is this idea of just like, kind of missing the mark on communication. Like everyone knows that relationships are really important. Everyone wants to have really positive relationships with their subs or with the hiring party. And sometimes things just don't go that way. And one thing that helps with that communication is this documentation part we're going to talk a lot about today. But before we go too much further, I'll talk a little bit just quickly about LevelSet. A lot of customers of ours probably on this call, so I won't go too deep. But really, construction payments are super complicated. They're very stressful. And for some reason, construction has this problem where people just don't get paid a lot. It's kind of rare when you look at a lot of other industries, but it happens a lot in construction. And we're really here to help with that payment process and make sure that everyone gets paid. We have a really great software to help with the documentation, preliminary notices and pay apps and waivers. We have, thousands and thousands of pages of free resources to help you with payment. We have a community of experts, credit managers, lawyers, and folks in the industry who chat about payment within the community. And we have our contractor payment profiles that allow people to see the payment history of those they work with. And most recently, we've added a fintech product that helps people get cash now when they're in a tight spot and need that cash flow to keep their business running smoothly. So that's the little LevelSet plug after the StructionSite plug. And we'll dive into today's content. So I'll just kick this off really quickly and talk about why do people not get paid or these common issues. They all kind of boil down to one thing. There's probably 101 reasons that issues can happen. Pretty much everyone who's listening in today has their own reason that they've had payment issues in the past. They can start as early as the contract or the bidding process, and they go all the way through the punch list and close out. But pretty much no matter what happens or what point it occurs, you can probably always trace it back to some communication issue or some collaboration issue. So one thing we noticed recently, or it's kind of like a no-brainer to some extent, but our survey data showed that GCs get paid a lot faster than the subs and suppliers. And we believe that is because the way payment flows from the owner or the lender to the GC and the GC down to the sub-tier parties. And as that becomes more of a complicated project, when there are more subs, more suppliers, more parties on the job that need to get paid, you have more complexity in how those payments need to go. There's more paperwork, there's more documentation, there's more checks and balances that become quite complicated. And there's a lack of visibility that happens from that GC knowing who they need to pay when there's 3 or 4 layers of people that the payment needs to flow through. And really just the nature of the cash flows in the business and this idea where people are trying to leverage themselves into the best position almost always ends up in this poor communication, this lack of collaboration, and we end up with payment issues. So it's not always the GC's fault. It's not always the sub's fault. It's not always the supplier's fault. There's always 2 sides to the coin. And really what we believe can help stop these payment issues is when people start collaborating and they start communicating. Any thoughts on that, Phillip, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely right. I mean, the GCs, one perspective is that they need to justify to their owner that what is being charged by the subcontractor is legitimate. So they have to do the due diligence. There's some additional stuff in there. There's some inspectors that come in, and so you're right. It's unfortunate that as you go down the line to the subs and suppliers, they essentially have to fund the project, as it's been mentioned a lot in LevelSet's own blogs.
Yeah, for sure. And just to kind of hit the nail on the head one more time, this is another set of data from one of our payment surveys that really hits that communication and collaboration element. When you look at the top 3 and some other ones in there, you're seeing that these are all communication related things that come up, like setting those clear expectations, whether it's in the contract or at the start of the job, having good communication between the contractors, having a good invoice process. That is in a way very much communication. How do we invoice? When do we invoice? Having a good follow-up process, all those things, good management by the GC, like you were talking about, doing that due diligence. And then what's funny is you see all the way at the bottom is this idea of taking a stand, holding firm. It's funny that that's the lowest. There's a time and a place for everything. If you're in a bad situation, just no one ever wants to file a lien, you might have to get to that issue. But chances are, if you've had good communication, you've had really good collaboration, you're never going to need to take a firm stand on something. And if you've set your expectations up front, people are happy to take your services. People are happy to use your supplies. They should know that there's a cost to that, and that's not necessarily taking a firm stand. It's just that good communication and good business practices. So is there anything you want to add to that, Phillip?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you get down the line, especially when it comes to the subcontractor level, I mean, they really know how the project gets built, right? The GC kind of sees things from a higher level. They see things, but the subs really know that, it was a lot harder to build this section over here or fabricate it or get it done. And so that actually might account for a higher percent of work that they already knew. And so, that's where the communication expectation really comes in, is like, being on the same page with the GC, between the GC and the sub is really important, so that you don't have to have these disputes and to make sure that everyone gets paid on time.
Definitely. And really that kind of like segues us nicely into this next part, which is like why you need to be doing all this documentation and, maybe why people don't do it in some cases. It's a lot of work, first of all, but like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it first. Phillip, is just like, why don't people track progress? Why don't they do this stuff that, is basically proven to help facilitate payments and facilitate really good relationships, which is really the key?
Yeah, I mean, I'll come in with one big reason that I've seen is that teams are just too busy. They're understaffed, and we can dive actually even deeper. There's like a deeper cause, which is, it's important to ensure that you're profitable on projects, right? And people are expensive. So it's natural that projects will kind of staff the minimum required to get the job done, but then also be profitable, right? That's just natural business. And that's also part of why people work so many hours in the construction industry. It leads to a lot of projects and staff maybe not having the time or to bother or to kind of start to guess quantities, which we can get into later. And for those that do track the job, they do the minimum to just get them by. Obviously, there's a lot of room for improvement, and I get it. It's time consuming. There's a lot of problems to be solved. There's so much fires that have to be put out, and there's not enough time today necessarily to start tracking and be more proactive. At least not without burning yourself out or sacrificing your relationship. So from what we've seen, it's mostly the minimum to get paid. Maybe not necessarily the best way to do it. It's necessary evil, but I'd say it's root cause. One big root cause is just understaffing on projects, especially with margins.
And burnout is such a thing that I think is like always, like you said, everyone's working these long hours and it manifests in these really, not ideal ways, whether it's safety on the job site, right, whether it's that lack of documentation where they're just like, oh, it doesn't matter, we did it. Like they'll see it. But then the drywall goes up and the paint goes up and it's like, well, did you actually do that correctly? So getting a little distracted or feeling burnt out or not really being all the way there is almost always bad. And like that documentation is going to come in to like help you in the event that like those things were missing. So.
Yeah. I mean, tracking things properly it's really tedious, right? It also doesn't take like it's not really like challenging work either. It's just kind of, you just got to do it. And with the pressures of construction, things moving really fast, trying to make schedule and budget. I mean, there's a reason why there's construction has among the highest rates of suicide and divorce rates, and there's some things there that just kind of it could be avoided by hopefully tech can help ease some of that pain of the manual mental labor of just tracking what's happening, so that more time can be focused on collaboration and solving problems.
Mm-hmm. What would you say would be like one thing that any construction business can do, today or very easily to help start tracking their projects just a little bit better, or at all?
Yeah, I mean, we can get to that. We'll definitely be getting to that in the next few slides. But before we get into that, I think we should definitely look into how tracking is how they try to do it today. Because there's definitely lots of companies that do track. You need to track so that you can document for being able to get paid and to be able to monitor your own internal profitability.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. I want to definitely peel back that onion from your perspective, because from ours, it's like people don't do a lot of this, payment paperwork just because it's a pain in the butt. Like it's confusing, it's complex. There's all these like rules and statutes and laws and legal changes that happen due to case law. And every once, we had a survey where we found out 80% of people or 80% of the companies that were polled in it spend a significant portion of their work week chasing down payments, chasing down paperwork. And a lot of them are, not really even using any technology to do so. So to follow up on, what you wanted to talk about, Philip, like I'd love to dive in and say, like, how are they doing it now? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah, I think that's a great transition to this next slide over here, which is, like how does done
Don't want
today?
to skip this one. This is the
Oh yeah, there we go.
This is what it looks like when people aren't using the technology and, trying to manage all this paperwork. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I like that. So, I mean, really, like, what I'd like to share is not just what we've gathered from talking to lots of people about how they track projects, but even actually like personal experience and like relatively fresh experience. I spent last summer actually doing some tracking, the manual way with a drywall sub here, just so you can get I can get firsthand experience and where things can be improved, and also like experience that like firsthand. And what I found was that, which many people are kind of aware of, is that trying to track things properly without tech is manual, and it's also physically challenging. So basically, you see me over there holding a bunch of papers, some markers, basically walking around the job site with a clipboard, a bunch of 11 by 17s to highlight scopes of work, revisiting the same room 3, 4, 5 times, and having to redo this process on a weekly basis. So it was definitely, it wasn't the funnest work. I mean, it definitely gets you to understand what's happening on site. But at the end of the day, it's these highlighted drawings that are being used to get everyone else kind of on the same page, and to be able to create those production values.
Is that common, or like the
Yeah.
weekly cadence? I guess it probably depends on the trade itself, or if you're the GC. Like, how often are people, going out there with this stack of paperwork or whatever tools they have and highlighters and making these updates? Is it usually weekly?
Usually we've seen them do it weekly. That's kind of when the people installing the work and the unions, like those laborers, they get paid more on a weekly basis. Sometimes it's done monthly because to match up with the pay apps. From what we've heard, people would love to do it daily, but it's just because it's so time consuming that it's not as practical, or it's a lot harder to do. So much fewer actually do it on a daily basis. So weekly is the most common one that we've seen, where they can get the ROI especially.
Right.
And with doing this, highlighting this, I mean, we quickly realized that you can get 2 different PEs to track the same thing, and you get different results, because like it's really open to your interpretation. Like, how do you know that's actually done? How far did it get done? Did you highlight right up to the stud, or you just kind of fudge it a little bit? There's an extra translation layer sometimes when like you bring it back to OST or Bluebeam. So a lot of them are guesstimates. I think maybe you guys have seen some similar things happen.
Yeah, I'd say that, like, from our perspective, we're not necessarily like, a lot of our customers are very off the job. They're in the back office, and it's really important for them to know what's going on the job site to be able to build properly. And that's where like the connection between StructionSite and LevelSet kind of like comes in, is thinking about like, how do we know when to bill or whatever. And if people are, if the sub is going and saying this is done on their thing, and the GC is saying like, no, it's not, like I tracked it a different way, and there's no like proof to back it up, it's just like highlighter on the paper, like it becomes more challenging and more dangerous for the relationship for those back office people, where they have conflicting things to look at, where they're saying, well, I sent in the pay app with the proof, and you're telling me that the proof is a lie. And like, that causes those bad situations, and like those leverages, and like not the collaboration that we want to see, and that we do see a lot of times on the job site.
Right. Yeah. So there's that human bias of like, kind of, even though people see the same thing, there's based on experience, or different types of knowledge. Like, some people will think done is some things are done, some things are not done. And yeah, that could create some lack of it create and so distrust between, say, like a GC and this on the sub, and it presents a challenge sometimes in getting approved for payments.
Definitely.
So like, and the question here is like, how do we remove that bias, right? So that's one example of how tech can help with that. You can definitely track things properly. You could use tech like this one right here, StructionSite, called Smart
Yeah,
Track.
this looks really cool. What's going on here?
So here, what you do is, so you capture a site with like an off-the-shelf 360 camera, and basically, and you just walk and hit all the rooms once. This is something that like a PE or someone on a project team or foreman can do at the end of the week or end of the day. So rather than spending hours walking around the site with a clipboard and a highlighter like you saw previously, just walk it with a camera. And what this tool will do, called Smart Track, it allows you to contextualize where you walked automatically on the drawing, and then it'll actually automatically analyze what got installed. So give you the exact quantities, right? You get paid on the quantities, and then you can match that against your labor to make sure that see where you're productive. So it not only gives you like the numbers and the graphs like you'd see on the right, for your pay apps, but then really knowing where things got installed, because that's really where, if there's any kind of disputes or questions from the GC or the owner in terms of what got done, like that map, like really shows reality, like what part of the job site gets done, so that when someone walks the site, they'll be like, oh yeah, that's exactly what they see. So this helps establish a cadence of trust, as well, and as well as a really strong backup for your pay app.
Yeah, this is really cool. So we were talking about like how a lot of people like don't love to do the tracking stuff. It's kind of cumbersome. Tell me about, you have this off the shelf, 360 camera. You walk through the site like this person, this little orange line did here. How long does it take for someone to do that and then like end up with this cool data and like completion metrics and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'd say, compared to doing it like the old way, so we did a side by side, like kind of walking manually and trying to highlight everything. For one project, it took about 6 hours to be able to track everything for just one subcontractor, and we were able to do the same thing in an automated way, walking for about half an hour. So it's really just how fast you can walk is the limitation.
1/12 of the amount of time. I like that.
It's much faster, and then everything just kind of gets chugs along. But the point here is that it definitely, that time that you save can be spent trying to make sure that you're on schedule and you're on budget, or to be able to kind of look for opportunities to improve productivity, make sure that the flow of work is much smoother, write that RFI, get stuff cleared up, and get crews scheduled up. Like that's the point of this, is to reduce time so that you can spend more time collaborating.
Nice. Sorry, I kind of jumped the gun on this next slide, but just keep going, because I'm digging this.
So, definitely want to talk about some of the benefits of tracking. First and foremost, you want to be able to leverage your data that you track. Tracking what happens allows you to make sure that you can leverage that to pay out your vendors, perform cost analysis, productivity analysis, really, and being able to gather that more quickly, more frequently, and accurately. It's important so that you can say, trend your production against your man hours, for example, so that you can make sure that you're on budget. Because what happens, like the estimator will go in and assume certain production values, and so like, how do you know that you're meeting those values? How do you know that you're making money? Like, how do you answer the question, did you make money today?
Yeah.
Right. And really, you have to be able to track things and track them frequently and detailed enough, as well. And when I expand, tracking things to a high level of detail is really critical. When you're tracking things, you can't just like roughly say, yeah, we're about half done, on this floor with all the drywall. Like drywall, for example, there's different productivity rates for top down partial drywall versus full height production drywall. Like it's a lot harder to install. It takes longer to install the top down because you have block cuts for MEP. It's hard, it requires special equipment to get above the ceiling. So like critical path activities like this can really make or break your budgets or schedules.
Yeah, definitely. And like I love that mixed especially with this last bullet where, as humans, we're actually really bad at judging how productive we are or how productive we can be. And when we, set out to do, some top-down drywall, we might, when you get really good at the trades and you've been in them for years, you kind of know you have a better idea. But as humans, we still always like underestimate or overestimate, I guess, depending on how you look at it, like how quickly we can get things done. And if you think something's going to take 20 hours, there's actually a good chance it's going to take 30 because you're not necessarily factoring in all the other stuff. Especially with coronavirus going on, there's a lot of changes in how productivity works, how much time things taking, how you need to bill a little bit differently to be able to make up on those costs and be profitable. And having this accurate historical data of tracking the projects, knowing when I do a room this big with this type of drywall, this is actually how long it took. And this is actually where we were on day 3 versus day 15 on a bigger project. So having that and being able to look over it is going to set you up for success. Like it's even beyond like this billing in a current job, how you bid on jobs later, how you really understand like what needs to be done and how long it's going to take. So really good to have that historical data.
Yeah, and it's important not to just track what got done for the pay app, but really like in between that time, it's important to get like a good as real time as possible on the pulse of the current jobs, production rates and productivity rates, because rather than waiting until things get blocked and delayed, and then that pay app or your cash flow getting disrupted. If you can look at your trends frequently enough, you can react faster. You say, hey, you look like we're running behind here. Maybe this other trade is blocking this piece of work. Knowing where things are slowing down. That's why, when you want to track properly, you do want from a map. Because like at the end of the day, we're building something physical, right? That has a location, and like, the flow of work is a huge part of productivity. So being able to see that allows you to proactively address those, and then really allow you to help cultivate relationships between the project stakeholders, versus just spending all your time doing data collection. If you're able to leverage technologies to like help reduce that time and get something that's even more thorough and frequent, that can really improve relationships.
Yeah, well, 100%. And like the technology element is awesome. Like it's definitely really cool, especially what y'all are doing over at StructionSite. This idea of just like really good detail done really easily. But in reality, a lot of people aren't able to like go and implement these technologies, smaller businesses and stuff.
Right.
What would you say to someone who, maybe can't implement technology either because of like monetary, reasons, or they just don't want to do it? Like what could, people do without technology, and what should they be doing if they can't use technology?
I mean, if they can't use technology or don't currently use it, I think first and foremost is to at least do some progress tracking. Even just highlighting papers, because I definitely think that's better than not tracking things. Like some people will maybe track things at the beginning when the activities start and when they end, and then just kind of like guesstimate in between. But that's really robbing them of data they need to like, it's hard to control profitability and then also future profitability when bidding projects.
Yeah,
If you're not getting like accurate, that's accurate productivity rates. That's why lots of estimates are not correct, right? And the more accurate you can make them, the more competitive really you can be, and the higher likelihood you'll make money at the end of the day.
awesome.
So like really having that historical record, companies need to leverage that, especially in the longer term, so that rather than like, I mean, there's definitely some very experienced people, in construction, and estimating a project definitely goes off of a lot of experience. A lot of it also, to be frank, it's based on gut feel, and there's a lot of room for error. There's overestimation, as you're talking about, Alex. And so really having accurate data to back up your estimate in a day, it can mean the difference between being in the red and being in the black in terms of your profitability.
Definitely. Very cool. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. Is there anything else first of all, thank you so much for joining us on this, Phillip. It was really, really great to have you here talking about this stuff. Is there anything else you wanted to chat about? Any final plugs, perhaps? And if we have any questions in the Zoom, can answer those as well. But yeah, take it away while I see if we have questions.
I definitely appreciate the opportunity here to talk about the benefits of progress tracking just in general, with or without technology. We definitely did keep things at a high level here. Wanted to focus more on the business side, not to get too specific on the software. But if anyone's interested, we're actually holding a summit on the 12th, and we'll be talking in much detail in terms of like how that could work if you're interested. Otherwise, I hope that this discussion on just tracking progress in general was pretty helpful.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thank you again for joining us, and we hope to do this again sometime soon. And thanks for everybody who came in after their lunch hour, or during it, or before it, if you're on the West Coast. And hopefully we'll see you next time.
Are we going to be answering questions during this call? Or?
I don't think we have any questions. We have a raised hand from Nan. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time getting all my Zoom controls here. See if I can get a raised hand from Nan. All right, Nan, do you have a question? I've permitted you talking responsibilities if you want. You can also chat in if you'd prefer. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's not actually Nan, it's Doran. Sorry, man. Hey, so pretty cool. So I was kind of listening. I wasn't super paying attention. How does that work out? Do you have that 360-degree camera that you just walk around with? And you said that you kind of went through a job site, walked it. It took 6 hours to document it the old school way, but with 360, you essentially were able to do it in half an hour, right? So how quickly does that camera capture everything? Because when you're going to download this information, then you're going to essentially I can look at it if I'm the project manager at the home office, and can I stop at any point just to kind of look at things and zoom in to see details and stuff like that?
Yeah, the way it works, you can get one of these 360 cameras right here. They're selling at Best Buy, Amazon, pretty cheap. And then, you walk around. So it like creates you ever see like a Google Street View type of thing where you can kind of, it gives you literally like a Google Street View type of thing, but for your job site. So yeah, you can stop, you can look around as if you were physically there, at a given point in time. And then you can compare that to whatever quantities that it said it was installed.
So then what does your company do? Is it just the software that integrates with the 360 that makes it easy to document things? Is that what your company does, Struction?
Yeah, StructionSite will integrates with the hardware. It has the mobile app that integrates everything and puts on a drawing, and then it'll also pull out the quantities automatically in what it detects got installed using artificial intelligence.
Cool. So how do you guys charge for something like that? Do you guys charge per user? Is it per company?
It's per project and per company, and you can definitely hit me up. At my email Phillip at StructionSite.com if you're
cool. All right, we'll do. All right, that sounds good. We'll do that.
Thanks for the question. Much appreciated. See if we have anybody else out there who has any questions. All right. I think that's probably it for us. Well, thanks again for everyone for joining. Appreciate the questions. Our emails are here if you have any questions about LevelSet, managing your payments, or StructionSite, tracking your jobs and keeping things moving with lots of great documentation. We have our emails there at the bottom. You can always give us a call as well. I'm sure each of us have some phone numbers on the website. So everybody have a wonderful week and a great weekend. Stay safe out there.